must protect sugar. Thieves everywhere. The strong must protect the sweet. The sweet.
Homer?
In America, first you get the sugar, then you get the power, then you get the women.
Homer! Homer!
What?
I want you to forget about guarding the stupid sugar. You're being completely paranoid.
Oh, am I? Am I really? Aha!
Hello.
All right, pal. Where'd you get the sugar for that tea?
I nicked it when you let your guard down for that split second. And I'd do it again. Goodbye.
You see, Marge? Do you see?
Homer, when are you going to give up this crazy sugar scheme?
Never! Never, Marge. I can't live the button-down life like you. I want it all. The terrifying lows, the dizzying highs, the creamy middles. Sure, I might offend a few of the blue noses with my cocky stride and musky odors. Oh, I'll never be the darling of the so-called city fathers who cluck their tongues, stroke their beards, and talk about what's to be done with this Homer Simpson.
Look, just get rid of the sugar, okay?
No! Hey! Get off my sugar! Bad bees! Bad! Ow! Ow! Oh, they're defending themselves somehow!
Down, Paul.
Yeah,
Tone it
you
down.
We started recording at exactly the right moment. You guys missed the fun half, which is the early.
We got
half.
it all out.
Right. Guess.
Just shoot it all out before we start recording.
You'll never guess what we invented, basically.
Yeah, no,
Mm-hmm.
it's.
I'll give you a hint, Ridley Scott.
Look on it. Look for it on shelves
Unguessable.
near you soon.
Yeah, dude. Anyway.
Hey, everybody.
Hello. Spinecrackers
Hello,
here.
everyone.
Spinecrackers podcast.
Yeah. Another
Yep.
one
Another one.
is happening.
This
now.
is. We forgot to memorialize it last week. It's not really. It doesn't matter. But last week was our 40th episode.
Wow.
So this
Gabe,
is.
You're like a clinging
Happy
girlfriend.
40th.
This is episode 41. I know. Hey, did you guys know that last week was actually our 40th episode?
Wait, this is our 41st episode?
You forgot? Oh my god.
This is our 1 month anniversary of having gotten ice cream at that one place one time.
Yeah.
You could say that the sum of all our episodes now is 41.
That's true. If you add every individual one up, this is the 41st.
You could say the sum is sum 41. The sum is 40.
Oh, wow. How did I not pick up on that?
That took a hot minute, dude.
Because my humor is so dry that it doesn't even come across as jokes
Dude.
99% of the
Yeah.
time.
Can you please remind me of the Sum 41 song that I'm trying
Cause
to...
I'm in too deep,
deep
and I'm trying to keep up above.
in my head.
That was one. There's a few. They had a few others.
Remember.
They had a few other hitters.
There were only like two, right, that had the big...
There's
play.
that one, and then there's Fat Lip, which is the one where they do a lot of rapping.
Oh, that one guy who's like... Should have had an abortion.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like when I'm 70 years old, I'm gonna be mixing Parappa the Rapper with Sum 41, and like I'm gonna think, and they're gonna be the same person melded
Can
in my
you
head.
sing one song from Parappa the Rapper?
No, I don't think I even played it, so I actually don't know any of the songs. I just remember like seeing it.
Almost certainly a better rapper than Sum 41.
Oh, yes, of course. And that one guy from Evanescence.
Evanescence?
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh,
All
yeah.
of those bands had rappers.
No, are you thinking of Linkin
Linkin
Park?
Park had a rapper.
Oh my god.
You're thinking of Linkin Park.
I am
You're
thinking of Linkin Park.
Yeah.
Shit. Rest in peace. Right, Chester.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah.
Just
But
say
it bears repeating. F in the chat.
when I play my brothers in like video games, like specifically Dragon Ball Z Budokai,
Oh God.
I would always be Krillin, and I do Destructo Disc and knock them off of the stage, and that's like sort of Virtua Fighter style, like that's how you could win. And then I would sing. I tried so hard and got so far, but in the end it didn't even matter.
Nice.
And they would get so
I bet
tilted.
your brothers loved that.
They would like black out. They were so angry.
That's classic brother behavior.
Short circuit them.
Yeah.
My name's Gabe, by the way. Listeners.
Matt.
My name is Paul. Paul.
This is the Spine Crackers podcast. We said that at least already.
We did say it. Yeah. we
Yeah.
did say that.
And this week,
First of all, hold on. Shout outs to you, listener. But join our Patreon, patreon.com/spinecrackers. Our Discord is up and running. Well, all three of us are on it. It's popping off. We're rising. Spinecrackers are unstoppable.
we are the future.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Instagram, Twitter. Don't get left in the fucking dust.
yeah, we will
Yep.
stand atop the corpses of every person who's ever spoken about books. Period.
That's right.
honestly.
And their backs will be broken.
YouTubers.
Except for those who've chosen to befriend us in a
That's right.
wise move.
And if you're doing that, get in on it early.
Yeah.
Because
because
once this
we only
rocket
have-
leaves the station, it's no new friends, baby.
Yeah, we only have. There's only 5 days left to subscribe to any of our stuff. and
That's
after
not
that,
true.
You can't.
That's false. No.
You have 5 days to subscribe to our YouTube channel. After that, never again. So
We won't accept fans or anything. TikTok.
That statement is not true.
not true. Sorry.
But
Satirical.
But yes. Do it soon.
Attire.
Do it soon.
The sooner the better.
Sooner the better, really.
So,
All right. Well, this week, welcome to Spine Crackers Middle School Edition. Spine Crackers Middle School After School Special
not
All
a
you
referendum
eighth
on the
graders out there,
intellect.
listen up.
for all of our 8th grade fans out there.
Yeah, if
Okay.
you're looking for some sort of
I gotta defend
Craig's Notes
myself.
for
Wait.
those
We
classes-
haven't even
this
said what the
pick.
book is. We haven't even said what the book
Yeah,
is.
chill.
This week, we're reading legendary American author, sort of seemingly...
Jason Statham.
I feel like this man is...
I love the flag. I'll have to transport the flag to the Washington, D.C.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if you guys have this sense, but I feel like this guy is not very hip these days. He's kind of not like... I don't know. I don't see a lot of
No.
people talking about him or whatever. Maybe it's because it's all played out. But we're talking about Mr. John Steinbeck's novella. I think we can all... This is a discussion we've also had a million times. I think this is all... we can all agree that this is a novella.
This officially
Yeah.
is a novella.
It is a novella. I'm gonna actually classify it as a pamphlet of a book
Oh, wow. Okay.
because it looks like and feels like a pamphlet.
I feel
in
like
hand.
pamphlets are like political inherently. Like
it's
it has to be like,
liter-
informational.
It's
But I get- I know what you
literature in
mean,
the
Paul.
sense of like, yeah, a weird religious group will come to your door and be like, "We have some literature here for you. You can keep."
And that's
it's like-
us doing
and
it
it's
right
like a-
now.
Yeah, and it's like a
Yes.
folded thing. Yeah.
Anyway, so we're reading John Steinbeck's novella from 1947, The Pearl.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm gonna explain why we're reading this book.
It's Paul's choice.
It is my choice, but what happened this week was this wasn't supposed to be the week for this book, and Matt texted us
That's
on
true.
Thursday.
Yes.
And it was like,
Fine,
holy
wanna air
shit!
the
I
laundry
read.
out?
I'm throwing you directly under the bus, directly
fine,
under the
that's fine.
wheels, Matt.
That's cool, man.
So Matt read The Pearl instead, and was like,
just
"Oh
fully
shoot, I
read the wrong
Pearl."
book. Just fully read
Yeah.
the wrong book.
I read the wrong book this week.
So we were like, "Okay, let's just do The Pearl this week."
And mind you, we have a readily accessible Google Doc with all of the books, with
Yes.
dates, that we're reading coming up.
So it's
And
pretty
Paul mentions
easy.
Paul mentions the Pearl one time in our group chat.
Yeah,
and
I
Matt
didn't
just
say
jumps to the conclusion that that's the book we're reading this week
Pearl,
for some
Pearl,
reason.
read Pearl.
I'm sorry if my mind is a steel trap that just takes something in and never lets go.
All I wrote was, I got the Pearl today. But when I got it, I was like, this book is so short.
And I was,
And
like,
I
read
was
you
actually
loud and clear.
planning to not pick it. I was going to because it was going to be in like 4 weeks or so. And I was like, I'm going to pick a different one. But we read it, though. We read this book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're about to do it, and then we're about to talk about it.
We are.
Right.
Well,
I kind of like the throwback stuff because I know, like we can throw this into the similar category as Gatsby in terms of like canonical kind of American writers and the fiction they've written and it being taught.
yes,
You
big
are right.
time.
Like I did literally read this in middle school myself.
Yeah, and I was just talking to one of our patrons on our Discord today about it, and he also confirmed that this was a middle school read for him.
Yeah, it's part of whatever like standardized curriculum it is suggested. You
Yeah.
know what I mean, to like middle school teachers.
And so it'll be one sort of interesting thing that I think will come out over the course of the discussion is like this question of, because presumably you teach things in middle school that are supposed to be kind of like entry level literature, stuff that obviously a middle schooler can comprehend. We talked a little bit about some of the symbolism in The Great Gatsby as kind of like, baby's first symbols and stuff like that.
Right,
and so it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to sort of talk through like where this book might fall on that kind of spectrum.
Well, pedagogically, it could be an interesting thing to just discuss as like, yeah, maybe in terms of why it would be placed
Right.
in that like time frame of education.
Mm-hmm.
So
give us a rundown.
So yeah, Paul, why, like you did pick this at some point with the intention to read it. What was your
Yes.
thought process then?
Well, okay. Well, you had been hounding me to fill up my list. So one night I was just like,
Can anyone tell that I just love this list and I'm very proud of it and excited about it?
read the list. Know what we're reading. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, go.
So after 2 weeks of you telling me to do it, I was like, oh shit, okay, I'm gonna do it tonight. And I just Googled a bunch and filled up a few good books, I think, in my other picks. And I moved some around, and this was just happened to be one of them. I was Googling, like less than 200 page good books, and this was just on a list. So that was basically it.
Hell yeah.
I mean, I also have never read any Steinbeck. I didn't read this in middle school, and I didn't even know what he had written, but I was like, I've heard that name before, so I should read one of his books.
You went by the numbers, 200 or less.
Just going chalk.
Yeah, and it ended up being like 90.
It's definitely
I didn't
under
even look.
200.
Yeah, and so it's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do
But yeah,
just want to
this-
say, dude, one more point about the list. I am very proud of the list of books that we've read and have coming up. It's diverse as shit and it's good. So shout outs to us.
Yeah, all right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, good point. We're great.
So we've gotten the sort of the background about why this. Are you suggesting sort of unlikely and somewhat regrettable choice is occurring?
No. Yeah, yes.
I think Matt's
Yes, I am.
Matt's trying to defend his choice last week.
His choice to just read. Go ahead and read.
Listen,
No. I
mean,
mean, the last book we read. That
Okay.
None of us
Oh, yeah.
liked.
Yeah.
but we had fun.
It was fun.
And that's okay.
It was fun.
and it's the friends we made along the way.
That's right.
Okay,
I love to hate, and I hated that book. It was fun to hate it.
right.
So what the hell is this book about, Paul?
This book's about a guy. I mean, it's about an evil pearl that basically comes out of the ocean. It's a giant evil pearl, and
Are you
it
saying
wreaks
it- are you-
havoc in the town. And people die. A baby dies, and people learn life lessons along the way.
Are you saying this book
a
has
horror novel,
Are you
for
saying it has
sure.
sci-fi elements?
Definitely sci-fi elements. I mean, it's a classic horror novel, right? Am I right? It's spooky. I mean, it comes right out of the ocean.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't really want to freaking talk about the freaking. It's really just a cut and dry story about a guy who he's a poor man with a family, a wife and a baby, and I don't know his.
Takes place in.
Is he a fisherman?
He's a
In
fisherman.
Spain.
He's well, no, it's like La Paz. It's like Baja, like southern. The southern Baja Peninsula in Mexico.
Oh, okay.
La Paz, which
I
is a
thought it
real
was
place.
Mexico, but when I read the back, maybe I read it wrong. Yeah, I read it wrong. It does play. Yeah, you're right.
It's still called California, but it's a Mexican territory. It's like, it's a little confusing.
It's the southern Baja Peninsula.
Right. But it is
Baja.
technically one of the few stories that doesn't take place in California in Steinbeck's oeuvre.
Oeuvre.
In his egg of work.
His pearl of an egg.
Yeah.
Ooh. We're already getting into some deep connections.
Do you think the pearl goes in someone's ass?
Oh,
Do you think it
Jesus
goes
Christ.
in the ball?
No one thought about that when he was hiding it from all the greedy people in the village.
Yeah.
It could have gone in his ass.
Or maybe that's why they wanted it.
Yeah, yeah. It's smooth as hell. looking.
Definitely that creepy, sweaty doctor. That's why he wanted it.
Well,
Yeah.
this reminds me of the joke I told you guys in the text and no one responded about when I was reading the book. After like 10 pages, I was like, I'm just going to substitute the word dildo with the pearl to make this more enjoyable, and it's really
did work.
funny.
It did work.
It did
it
work.
works.
It works for every sentence.
It mostly works, yeah.
Yeah. If anyone's reading The Pearl and is in middle school or just reading it, just
That-
call it the dildo.
That one's
every
for our
time.
middle school audience for sure.
Yes,
For sure.
definitely.
Okay, well, yeah. Do we want to do any more plot exposition than that? Or
There's so
I
little
mean,
like
it's a folktale. Matt said it's kind of based on a Mexican folktale, right? I didn't know that. but
Yeah.
it reads like a folktale.
I don't know how widespread or like widely known or popularized it was because so I didn't fully like do a deep dive on it, pun intended.
for the pearl of
For
wisdom.
the pearl of wisdom about whether or not this folktale was like legit, or was like, or it could just be a very colloquial and like parochial kind of story.
Parochial.
Very parochial. It's very
Parochial.
specific to that region, which apparently Steinbeck went to, and
Yes.
like he basically just heard this story and liked it a lot, and that's what it says, very loosely. And so who knows who told it to him or whatever, but yeah.
Well, so this is actually I have like so Steinbeck was very interested in like marine biology and like what's it fucking called when you study plants?
No.
Like
Holy shit.
Botany.
Botany. Thank you, Paul.
Sick.
He was interested. He was sort of like a pseudo like naturalist, and he was very close friends with a guy named Ed Ricketts, who was, I think, professionally some sort of marine biologist or something like that. And Ricketts serves as the inspiration for a number of characters through Steinbeck's book. But they went on basically like a walkabout. Ricketts took Steinbeck on one of his sailing trips to various places, in South America and Central America and stuff. And they wrote a book about it together called The Sea of Cortez, right? Which is, and that book is where Steinbeck first relates this kind of folk tale about a guy who finds a pearl. And I actually think it might just be worth reading because it's literally like 2 paragraphs. It's very short. And it kind of, it's interesting to see the ways that story differs and overlaps with the actual novella that Steinbeck wound up producing.
And it's fun to just have like that meta story about hearing the story and how stories themselves kind of like simmer and change and like so yeah, go for it.
All right, so I'm just gonna read it. So this is from Sea of Cortez, and Steinbeck and Ricketts are visiting, sort of are in and around La Paz. And as in all concentrations of natural wealth, the terrors of greed were let loose on the city again and again. An event which happened at La Paz in recent years is typical of such places. An Indian boy, by accident, found a pearl of great size, an unbelievable pearl. He knew its value was so great that he need never work again. In his one pearl, he had the ability to be drunk as long as he wished, to marry any one of a number of girls, and to make many more a little happy too. In his great pearl lay salvation, for he could in advance purchase masses sufficient to pop him out of purgatory like a squeezed watermelon seed. In addition, he could shift the number of dead relatives a little nearer to paradise. He went to La Paz with his pearl in his hand and his future clear into eternity in his heart. He took his pearl to a broker and was offered so little that he grew angry, for he knew he was cheated. Then he carried his pearl to another broker and was offered the same amount. After a few more visits, he came to know that the brokers were only the many hands of one head, and that he could not sell his pearl for more. He took it to the beach and hid it under a stone, and that night he was clubbed into unconsciousness, and his clothing was searched. The next night he slept at the house of a friend, and his friend and he were injured and bound, and the whole house was searched. Then he went inland to lose his pursuers, and he was waylaid and tortured. But he was very angry now, and he knew what he must do. Hurt as he was, he crept back to La Paz in the night, and he skulked like a hunted fox to the beach and took out his pearl from under the stone. Then he cursed it and threw it as far as he could into the channel. He was as a free man again, and his soul in danger, and his food and shelter insecure, and he laughed a great deal about it. And then Steinbeck says, I'll just read his kind of quick commentary. This seems to be a true story, but it is so much like a parable that it almost can't be. This Indian boy is too heroic, too wise. He knows too much and acts on his knowledge. In every way, he goes contrary to human direction. The story is probably true, but we don't believe it. It is far too reasonable to be true.
So was it true?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. That's his fascination.
I have a feeling he probably heard some sort of story like that at some point.
It's a very good summary of the plot points for the most
Yeah, why
part.
didn't we just read that? We could have just read that.
Done.
The whole book.
Thank you for joining us.
We actually just read you the whole book. Bye.
Yeah,
Basically.
I do think, and we can get into this, I think there are a lot of important differences thematically between that story that I just read you and the actual Pearl, the novella that Steinbeck produced. But that we can get into that a little bit later.
Yeah, I mean, basically, you know, the most, I don't know, what would you call it? Like the most surface reading would be just that a kind of like money is the root of all evil sort of tale, but, you know, with an available object and the woe it brings upon these people as, you know, I guess specifically like this poorer family who's a bit naive at first about their good fortune in receiving all this great wealth instead of like what happens in reality, which is that a bunch of envious and violent, devious people who come out of the woodwork.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's like the surface level, and then my take almost immediately was like, if you win the lottery, why would you shout it to everyone in your town as soon as you like get the ticket? Like he gets the pearl out of the clam or whatever and gets into his boat, and he's just like, pearl, I got the fucking biggest pearl, and like everyone knows immediately. And I read that, I was like, dude, you probably don't want to broadcast that to everyone.
I was trying to remember is there ever a scene people try to steal the Willy Wonka's golden ticket from Charlie, right? At the beginning of that story?
When he first
he's
gets
almost bribed by
someone tries to
Slughorn.
bribe him out of it. That's right.
Slughorn.
Yeah.
Slughorn.
Right. Anyway, that just crossed
But he
my
ends up
mind.
working for Willie.
Yes, that's right.
It's a test of character.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right, Paul. So this guy, this pearl diver / fisherman, whose name is Kino. There's basically like 4 characters that are named, I think, or 5. There's Kino, the guy that finds the pearl, this pearl diver fisherman, his wife Juana, their child Coyotito,
Cappuccino.
Kino's brother Juan Tomas, or is it just Thomas?
Yep.
Yeah,
It's
Juan
Tomas. I don't
Tomas.
know. Juan Tomas, yeah.
And then his wife Apollonia, who's not really a
Right.
major character. But I don't think anyone else in the story gets a name.
no, it's just
No.
their like kind of profession.
Yeah, so it's a very
Basically.
kind of small cast of characters, which fits with the sort of I want what's the term for it's not parabolic, but like
I was thinking that word too.
Parable-esque.
The parable.
But I want to use it as an adjective, right? Like it's the parable-like nature of this.
Let's just
story.
say it's parablotion.
Okay.
So I think it fits, right? It's a small cast of characters, sort of simple, sort of direct plot, right? And I think you're right, Matt, that the kind of obvious. And so like, okay, so yeah, he gets the pearl. Various people try to take it from him, and he then goes to attempt to sell it and is sort of cheated, presumably, by the pearl buyers, there's like 3 of them in his small town.
He's like conspiratorially stonewalled by like a
Yes.
faction of
Right.
Well,
of
yeah, you have to
appraisers.
give-
But they all work for the same guy, right? The pearl buyers
Yeah.
all work for one guy, and they kind of who we never meet.
Well,
It's
I think-
sort of
I-
this.
I think what's important if you're going to discuss a parable, right, is to stick in this case really strictly with the sequence of events as
Yeah.
they happen. So before that, we got to do this stuff before the pearl, I would say, or like who are Juana and Kino and like
Okay, yeah.
because I feel like in this story in particular, there's just sort of like this broadening of the wider world, but it never ceases to. It just increasingly becomes more and more threatening.
Yeah.
Like as the scope that the pearl opens up at first seems like this like beautiful sunset vista of their lives from now on forever being cushier and all these opportunities and doors opening.
Which
what ends up
already,
happening is-
just to flag before you keep going, Matt, sorry, but already that's a distinction with the version that I read from Sea of Cortez, in which, sorry, Matt just switched his background. No, it's funny. In which, in the one that I just read, the guy who finds the pearl only cares about it because he wants to get drunk and like have sex, right?
Right.
But
the first
in
important
this
change.
in this story, Kino wants the pearl, and he sees visions of his son becoming educated and him being able to have a proper wedding for him and Juana, and so on and so forth, and buy a rifle, which is like one of the big material things he wants to buy.
So like the first big change in that then would be the fact that the main male character is now a husband and a father. He's got a family. He's still poor. He's got skin in the game though, as they say, right? Like he's his stake in the future is more emotionally and chronologically solidified by the fact of his family and his son, I guess. I don't know. Because this is like there is a bit of that when you say I don't like idealization of the state of life prior. Although I would say that the story in its entirety complicates the starting point, so that you got to go like, okay, maybe these people were in some ways satisfied with their incredibly limited life and their poverty and all this, but they do kind of in the course of the book, in the novella, in the parable, kind of run into the cause and of the perpetuation of their situation obliquely. They don't like solve it or like really tackle it. Eventually, they kind of fail to deal with it because it's too powerful ultimately. And they make more of like a ethical or principled move at the end. But yeah.
But I think you're right to point out that at the beginning of the story, Matt, like the first kind of the opening description is sort of like their life is they're happy, they're like it's a beautiful fucking day, and of course like the Steinbeck's writing is great, I think, and it's just like clear and concise and economical in the best sort of way. But it's like this bucolic scene of him like waking up and the smells of all the various, they basically live in like a hut village on the beach, it seems like, right?
Yeah.
And then there's a small town of La Paz nearby. But all of the scents of the people making their corn cakes in the morning, and the sounds of people getting up and fires starting and da 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 da. And I think you're right, and it's important that that's presented as like a, things aren't so bad for them starting off, at least subjectively, right? Like obviously they're poor, obviously they're probably like objectively like oppressed and stuff in various sorts of ways.
Yeah, totally.
Right? But they themselves don't necessarily feel the like pressing, like any sort of like pressing misery or anything like that, it seems like.
Well, that's why, I think that's why it fits into like the 8th grade reading level category so well, is that like it does come across kind of like a shallow interpretation of these people. It is like how Matt said before, it's kind of like a surface level story. Like he doesn't dive into many themes. The themes that are presented are very clear to me and kind of basic. And there is kind of a juxtaposition, I think, between Steinbeck's ability to write. Like I haven't read any of his other novels, but his writing is really great, obviously. I mean, he's a classic American writer. He's American, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I haven't read any of his other novels, but the simplicity of this kind of reminded me of like I was kind of thinking of like a painter being like an amazing painter, like maybe, and they only paint like daffodils or something. It kind of gave me that vibe.
Well, just to add a sort of wrinkle to that, or push back a little bit, maybe, Steinbeck, I'm not like super well versed in Steinbeck. I've read this, Of Mice and Men. I read Tortilla Flat, which is one of his early novels years ago in college, and then like a couple short stories. Matt, have you read much Steinbeck?
I read Of Mice and Men. I also think I read that in high school.
Yep, same.
And then I read East of Eden in college.
Yeah.
Which I thought was actually like fucking really good.
Yeah, I want to read that. I want to read Grapes of Wrath, obviously, and he's got a bunch of war writing that I really kind of want to read. But one of the things that Steinbeck is preoccupied with, so he grew up in mostly in California and bopped around a little bit, but he was very kind of concerned with, in this book and in representing a culture that he was familiar with but was not his naturally, right? So he worked in fields with like Mexican day laborers and stuff when he was in California, and he grew up around a lot of these kind of like poor Mexican migrants in the area at the time. And so when he was writing this book, what I read, some of the stuff that I was reading, I think the introduction to the edition that I read mentions this, but he was worried about specifically trying to capture the language in a way that was true, but also not sort of like, I guess, appropriative or whatever, where he's just like, he's writing in English for an English speaking audience, but trying to capture Spanish as a sort of language. And it kind of reminded me a little bit, Paul, just to maybe touch back on your point of like, how Murakami like specifically writes in English to keep his writing simple. It sort of felt like Steinbeck was doing something akin to that in the way he approached writing this novel in general.
Yeah, or maybe, I was reading it, I think, as like, because I had the folk tale idea in my head. I was kind of reading it as like maybe like a simplification of language to try to make it more like a storytelling experience. To like, so, but I agree. I think maybe he was doing that also. But it's a little bit different because English is his native language. So it's kind of a strange exercise to try to like put your mind in the mind of a Spanish speaker trying to write in English when you yourself, that's your number one language.
I think one other thing that I'll just put out there, and then this is all of my background research is basically shot after this, but
yeah, you did.
But one of the other things that Steinbeck was trying to do with this novel, and I think there's a lot of ways that this comes through, is basically he was approached by, I forget the guy's name, but a sort of well-known filmmaker from Mexico, and wanted him to write a book that was adaptable into a screenplay for a film. And this was that book ultimately, and it was turned into a film, and it turned out to be, I believe it was the first Mexican-made film that was ever commercially distributed in the United States. And so I think one of the other things that Steinbeck had in mind in the writing of this story was trying to sort of write it. Obviously, it's not a screenplay, but with some sort of like filmic sensibilities in mind. And I do think you get that in the reading of it. There's a lot of stuff where it's like close shots and the perspective widens, and obviously there's a big use of music weirdly throughout the book, which
yes,
there's all the different songs. There's the song of we'll talk about this, I'm sure, but the song of the family and the song of the enemy and the song of the pearl and so on and so forth. And so
that was one of my favorite elements.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And I think one of the sort of reasons Steinbeck chose to include that was as a nod to the sort of like potential cinematic future of the book.
Do you think that's why the main character was called Kino?
That's an interesting question. It could be. I mean, it is referenced in the book that he's named after, I forget the guy's name, but there was a famous like Jesuit missionary who went to that part of the world who was named something Kino. I forget his name off the top of my head. But there is a real person referenced by that name, and I think his brother or the doctor or someone says, "Oh, you're named after one of the famous people who came here" or something before.
That's right. Yeah, I think the Reverend says that.
Yeah.
Every book is a sequel to the last book, though, because that's like definitely what happened with the last book we read. Right?
Well, that's true. There is a bizarre link now.
Yeah, that is weird.
Between this and Altered States, where
yeah,
there is some kind of like, because there was eventually a film, correct, as well, right? For the Pearl, there's been
for the Pearl,
maybe two, including one that was the one. Did they actually do the film? They did the film. Right?
They did the film. Yeah. I think the film came out the year after, or in 48 or 49. After the
and Gabe, I was listening, Matt. You weren't. Gabe said that it was the first Mexican made or like funded movie that came out in America. I listened.
Yeah, true.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not. I'm a piece of shit. I'm not.
What were you Googling?
Yeah, actually, literally, yeah.
You were Googling.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I actually really want to watch that now because this definitely has the. Like the Bicycle Thief or something. Like it has like that kind of potential filmically. So but again, you don't hear it mentioned in the same breath. So I wonder if it's, I wonder how it is as a movie.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so the movie actually came out the same year that the book dropped. He was writing this in 1944 and 1945. But they waited to release it until the movie was complete. So they released this alongside the film, which was directed by Emilio Fernandez.
And now people think it's so cool when they like make a comic book to go with the Matrix movie or something, and it's like, wow, I did a video game to go. You know what I mean? It's
Steinbeck did it first.
You want to talk about a full simultaneous multi-platform multimedia release? Steinbeck did it first.
Holy
dude.
Shit, that's pretty.
That's pretty cool.
About a pearl too. How fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, Gabe, you were saying he was somewhat ecologically minded and kind of interested in local ecology and just sort of an amateur naturalist and whatever. So I think like him going to Baja and by the time even he got there way back in the 40s, it was already kind of tapped out, correct? Like the pearls had been harvested, or no, I don't know. Like,
I mean, I don't know. I don't know enough about the. I mean, certainly it was. I believe that it was already sort of being exploited for sure. I don't know how long that went on or where, like, this time period falls in that, but it had definitely started.
But the description even in in that excerpt you read, that sort of 2-page excerpt about like, what is it, the roving? What was it? What was the description? It was like any place with like natural wealth, like
Yes.
great evils settle upon it. You know. with
Yeah.
their-
So right at the beginning, it says the Gulf and Gulf. I didn't read this part, but this is like 2 sentences before. The Gulf and Gulf ports have always been unfriendly to colonization. Again and again, attempts were made before a settlement would stick. Humans are not much wanted on the peninsula. But at La Paz, the pearl oysters drew men from all over the world, and as in all concentrations of natural wealth, the terrors of greed were let loose on the city again and again.
Yeah, and you think of like when I think of parables, I think of the Bible. I think of Jesus basically, and basically the method by which
Amen.
he imparted wisdom. Right? Was, oh my God, amen. Peace be with you. Say it back.
Judas Priest. What? Peace be with you.
I said peace
Is
be
that a
with
Catholic thing? I don't.
you. You gotta say, and also with you.
And also with you.
I didn't know that. I
Also with
wasn't
you.
raised
Yeah.
Catholic.
Thank you, Jesus.
Thank you, Jesus.
So I think of it in that way, where right, yeah, there's like there's an ethical, right? There's an ethical thing being imparted. A
Yeah,
parable has a very
definitely.
specific definition as like a non-metaphor. What is it? Like there's like a non-metaphorical aspect to an ethical lesson being imparted,
Yeah.
where there's not like something isn't something else. It's all told in a kind of somewhat realistic thing. There's not a tree that secretly stands in for like man's beneficence or something.
Right. Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Matt, because there is actually a biblical parable that it's unclear if how directly Steinbeck related that to this, but certainly he would have been aware of it. But in the Bible, in the book of Matthew, there's a parable that's called the parable of the pearl. And
Really?
yeah, and
it's my name.
Yeah, that's right.
The Book of Matthew.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Matthew 13:45 and 46. And it's basically, it goes, again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a merchant man seeking goodly pearls, who, when he had found one pearl of great price, went and sold all that he had and bought it. And the idea is apparently, and I'm not a biblical scholar, but it's about trying to illustrate both the in less value of material wealth in comparison to the glory of heaven, basically, right?
Well, I mean, Steinbeck was a pretty if not practicing, at least heavily influenced sort of culturally Episcopalian. He was I mean, there's a reason why also in this book, like the church is kind of the first person to kind of lean heavily on Kino. Like it's the first nominal good in the life of the local community on the beach that is in fact an oppressor, in a way, I would say. Right? Where the church father is like kind of like, oh, Kino's going to pull in a bunch of money. I see somebody, and he's going to try and have a much more elaborate and official sacrament of marriage with his wife.
Right.
I see an opportunity to get some cash to the church to like fix the leaky roof.
And sort
it's
of,
just- it's
and
the
there's the
first
whole
thing
thing
that's, like, on
about,
him.
there's the whole thing about, and I don't really know exactly how this works in Catholicism or whatever religion they were practicing, but like there's all this stuff about like if you can pay to have like additional masses like dedicated to your dead relatives or something, and that like increases their stature in the afterlife somehow. There's that referenced a couple times, including in the original telling of the story that I read earlier.
It's kind of like an Egyptian
That's very Catholic.
idea.
Yeah.
I didn't know that happened. That's weird.
No, yeah, me either. That was sort of an unfamiliar tradition to me.
Well, it's part and parcel with the super greedy. What do you? I
Well,
wish I remember what it's called.
it goes back to like fucking the thing that Martin Luther was pissed about, right?
Yes, right. That's what I'm trying to remember the
selling
name of.
the selling of shit. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Indulgences.
Yeah, Jinx.
Yeah. So I think it's supposed to Yeah, it's part of that whole, noble tradition of monetizing essentially all of these things that only a religion can offer as basically products.
Right.
So yeah, the church is the first and the father is the first. He's got the lightest touch, but he's definitely like leaning. He's definitely breathing on fucking Kino's neck.
Well,
as
and
soon as
he
hears about the
also
pearl.
sort of does the thing where he's like, "Oh, hope this doesn't make you turn bad, right? Like, hope this doesn't make you a bad religious guy now, buddy. You better implicitly you better get rid of it and use it for good stuff pretty quick. Wink, wink.
Right. Yeah, alms to the church that we can give
Yes.
to the poor. Wink, wink.
Yes.
But so to move the plot forward, right? Like the catalyzing event, the thing that kind of like I would say spurns the story forward is something that happens before he even gets the pearl, right? It's his kid Coyotito getting stung by the scorpion.
Oh yeah. But
So there's
I
this
forget
like
I forget what comes of that. Like the doctor. Oh yeah. So like he gets stung by the scorpion, and then he takes him to the doctor character, and the doctor's basically like, "I'm not going to do anything because you don't have any money." Right.
yeah, it sort of spurns the first exit from the super familiar womb-like world of the just the local village. There's this harmony, and there's like you get your first sort of descriptions of like the song of the family, and then like the scorpion comes down, and then the song of the enemy starts playing, and Kino, he tries to kind of like samurai chop, or, karate chop the fucking scorpion off of the bassinet, and it stings the kid, and yeah, it's just kind of like Juana kind of speaks the unspeakable, and she's like, "We're gonna take Coyotito to the doctor in town," and everyone's like, "Oh my god!" Like, the doctor wouldn't even touch one of us poor folk, and that's like the first like they're finally like breaching class, the class distinctions here, and doing the uncouth by asking for help where they know they're probably not going to get it, and indeed they don't.
Yep.
Just to prove a point for later on. So like this is all before so this is like why when the pearl is first discovered, like after this incident of being turned down by this like shitty fat fucking like lazy doctor who just wishes he could live in his Parisian flat again like he was in his 20s. I love that whole part of the book where like they're describing the doctor, they're describing his eyes as being couched in pouches of fat.
Yes.
Like little slits. And just thinking about Paris, and like even in Steinbeck is even just like in the book, like the doctor is romanticizing Paris. Like he lived in a small room, and his girlfriend was ugly, and it just like wasn't that good. But this guy is like eating like chocolates and just wishing he weren't in this like in the boonies basically. So he turns the family down, and then when they find this pearl, and that's the first real like I would say like the church father he's got an angle, but he's not doing anything. He's still basically a good person. He's just like anybody. He just sees a little opportunity to, beautify the church and fill the coffers a bit. But like the doctor's the first person who you can insinuate is out to hurt them and does and like scams them and then probably sends somebody to steal the pearl afterwards.
Yeah, the whole because I thought the whole scene where the doctor comes after he gets wind of Kino finding the pearl, where he sort of shows up and is like, "Oh yeah, I'll treat your kid's scorpion bite now," and then I believe the implication is like actively poisons the kid in order that he can come back later to cure the poison that he gave the kid.
Yeah, the doctor is evil, and the kid is actually already going to be fine. It's insinuated, like the kid was actually going to recover, and the doctor like gives the kid poison to make him look sick. Yeah, and then he waits an hour and has like a cup of coffee and eats a piece of chocolate, and then he comes back and is like, "I got the cure," and it's just faking. He's made the kid sick. It's Munchausen by proxy, kind of, or something like that.
And once again, this
It's
is a
super
failure
evil.
of Kino because, like, as a father, wouldn't you just immediately suck the poison out of your son's body?
Well, Juana
Well,
does
Juana
that,
did that.
at the beginning.
Yeah.
As soon as he's
But
stung.
Kino should have done it. Oh, she does it like immediately. I don't
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah.
Well, and I think one of the interesting things about Juana as a character is that she is kind of presented, thinking about the religious angle and stuff again, as this kind of like weird, and it's not just her, but throughout the book, like there's this weird hybrid of kind of like ancient sort of wisdom and traditional like religious beliefs and medicines and practices and stuff molded together with modern, Catholicism and these sort of evangelical in the literal sense, like religions that have come and sort of proliferated among the people, because she's constantly described as like she'll do like a couple Hail Marys and then throw in some like weird dark magic spells that, like, as Steinbeck describes them, sort of, that's inelegant language, but that I'm using, and it's not his exact words, but there's this weird confluence, right? It feels like you're seeing this kind of, it's not really presented as a tension, but this admixture of these various kind of histories and approaches to things like religion and medicine and morality.
So things are already like complicated in a kind of modern way already. I had a chunk
But
that
like
I just wanted to
mildly
read that-
complicated though.
Oh
Go
yeah,
ahead.
not
Would say
certainly
again,
not,
Paul?
like
I just said it's just like I mean, for the time that he wrote this, I know it's a parable, but everything it just seemed like mildly controversial or complicated, even for the time, like very tamely controversial. But go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
yeah. I mean, yes, definitely not. I think there's like a loss of innocence that happens, where they're never going to be able to have what they had before, and that's partially in some ways a good thing by the end of the book, because they're recognizing now some of even if it's like parochial, like some just the local evils around them. So they're not going to be able to have this state of innocence, but that innocence was, I don't know. They lived in it, but it was just a genuine state of ignorance. Like they didn't see how they were being exploited. But anyway, let me just read this chunk. So this is like what is it? The doctor, like the doctor is now getting wind that they've found a really big ass pearl, and he's like, oh, and he's sweating, and his eye pouches are sweaty. The news came to the doctor where he sat with a woman whose illness was age, though neither she nor the doctor would admit it. And when it was made plain who Kino was, the doctor grew stern and judicious at the same time. He is a client of mine, the doctor said. I'm treating his child for a scorpion sting. The doctor's eyes rolled up in their up a little in their fat hammocks, and he thought of Paris. He remembered the room he had lived in there as a great and luxurious palace, and he remembered the hard-faced woman who had lived with him as a beautiful and kind girl, although she had been none of these three. The doctor looked past his aged patient and saw himself sitting in a restaurant in Paris, and a waiter was just opening a bottle of wine. The news came early to the beggars in front of the church, and it made them giggle a little with pleasure, for they knew that there is no almsgiver in the world like a poor man who is suddenly lucky. Kino had found the pearl of the world. In the town, in little offices, sat the men who bought pearls from the fishers. They waited in their chairs until the pearls came in, and then they cackled and fought and shouted and threatened until they reached the lowest price the fishermen would stand. But there was a price below which they dared not go, for it happened that a fisherman in despair had given his pearls to the church. And when the buying was over, these buyers sat alone with their fingers played restlessly with the pearls, and they wished they owned the pearls, for there was not many buyers really. There was only one, and he kept these agents in separate offices to give a semblance of competition. The news came to these men, and their eyes squinted, and their fingertips burned a little, and each one thought how the patron could not live forever, and someone had to take his place, and each one thought with some capital he could get a new start. So it kind of just like runs the gamut of like the news of the Pearl, creating an idea for basically like a scam and an angle to benefit themselves of like all class of people.
Right. And I just love that. I think the description of the pearl buyers, and of course they come back later when Kino actually tries to sell the pearl, is so just like it's such a just savage critique of capitalism. Just the sort of just like
Yeah.
there's the appearance of all of these buyers doing their competition and who's
Right.
going to outbid the other, but
Just free
but
market,
behind
dude.
them, and of course we have no idea who it is. We never meet this person. There's just one guy that's buying all the pearls.
Right.
Yeah. But it is hard to relate to that level of capitalism as a metaphorically, like in accordance with anything today, though. Like, I mean, what can you really?
I don't agree with that.
Well, I mean, in terms of just like a found good. Like, I can't really think of any. Maybe I just am dumb, but I
Well-
was really just thinking of like the lottery having this kind of a, like I imagine Kino winning the lottery in his town, but I was trying to think of like what other places in the world kind of have this like found good lottery thing.
Well, I don't think of it in so much the sense of like a found good that you're trying to sell or something. In modern capitalism, it's not that there's one buyer so much as that there's like one seller. You know what I mean? Or one or two sellers, right? Where it's like, like I want to go get a bottle of water, and it looks like there's 20 different types of water on the shelf, but all of those brands are owned by Coke or Pepsi, right?
Yeah, Aquafina, Pepsi,
Or Nestle maybe. And so it's sort of
Yeah.
it's sort of an inverse of the way modern capitalism works, where it's not that there's one person who monopolizes kind of, you know, the production of people, where you buy all of these products or the labor or whatever, but you only have one or two options in terms of choice for purchasing goods. So I thought that was the way that related to me.
That's a good point. It's sneakier now. It's harder to see.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, there's a moment I know I just read, but where he's bringing the fucking pearl to the buyers finally, and he refuses eventually to sell to them because they've all, of course, they all work for the same person. It turns out they all agree to stand by the same line of argument where they're like, the pearl's too big and beautiful.
Right.
It's actually worthless.
It's basically like a curio. Like no one can really wear it. You can't really do anything with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, come on now. So it goes, when the evening came, the neighbors in the brush houses sat eating their corn cakes and beans, and they discussed the great theme of the morning. They did not know, it seemed, a fine pearl to them. But they had never seen such a pearl before, and surely the dealers knew more about the value of pearls than they. And mark this, they said, those dealers did not discuss these things. Each one of the three knew the pearl was valueless. But suppose they had arranged it before. Well, if that is so, then all of us have been cheated all of our lives. and just that, they
Right.
refuse. They just don't want to countenance that. They don't want to look at that.
Right.
So they're just like, I think Kino's actually just being pig-headed, and he's not. You know, he's just not being smart about this.
Yeah. Well, and there's a line. I might try to find it, but there's a line that Juan Thomas says, or Juan Tomas. I forgot. Where he's sort of talking about like, you know, yeah, dude, like you're not you will not have been the first person to be cheated out of something from our people. Like this is
Right.
just like the way it is, and it's the, you know, I feel like Juan Tomas has this kind of, he's the older brother, and he's sort of presented as having like a little bit more kind of like life experience and some wisdom and whatever, and I feel like he walks this fine line between, and I feel like the whole book sort of does this in a way, like just kind of accept your station, and like this is just kind of like the way it is, versus like, I know that the way it is also bad and sucks.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but I never really felt there was any like conscious moments from Kino or Juana were that like they were cognizant of that. It was more like as a reader you are, but it's like I don't know if they ever really learned that lesson.
Well, they have
You
the.
know?
You know what they have is the songs. Like the songs, I think are like
Yeah.
these. Just a way of describing instinct and like gut feelings, basically, right? Like I just feel bad about this. I love my family. The song of the family. It sounds good. I love it. It makes me feel good. Oh no, I'm at the dealers for the Pearl, and the Song of Evil is playing really
Or
loudly.
the what is it? This is it. Yeah, I forget. Yeah.
Were there other songs?
There was
It was the
Song
song of
of the Enemy?
Sauron
the song of Sauron.
Right.
because
Yes.
the pearl is the one ring. So.
Yeah, very much. I think the song of the enemy. I think he describes the pearl as having its own song at one point. I don't remember.
Oh, true. Yeah, the Pearl does just have its own song.
Yeah. But those are the two big ones: the song of the family and the song of the enemy.
But yeah, I think those are just sort of a kind of intuition-based wisdom that I think
it's
Kino
fucking
does
vibes.
possess. Yeah, Kino's an antenna just picking up vibes.
Yeah.
For sure.
But I also think, like, to your point, Paul, about like, do they ever learn this lesson or not? Right? Like, I think Kino's, at the end of the day, right? Like, despite some of his subject matter and some of the people he writes about, Steinbeck's an American writer, and I think Kino is pretty clearly crafted as a character who is pursuing something that would be recognizable to most of Steinbeck's readers at the time as like the American dream, right? Like I came into a bunch of wealth, or I got lucky, or I, whatever, struck
or a
oil.
gold deposit.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Struck
Yeah.
oil or struck found a gold vein. And now I'm going to fucking climb the ladder. Now I'm going to make something of myself. I'm going to make a life for my family and so on and so forth. And I think that that's like a very sort of, Americanized or play on the American dream. And I think someone like Juana or Juan Thomas even are sort of counterpoints to that, in the sense that like Juan Thomas is sort of like, dude, you're overreaching here. Like this is not going to wind up well for you. And Juana, of course, at one point tries to throw the pearl into the ocean on her own, because she sort of intuits that it's going to bring them kind of ruin, which of course it does. And so I think that there's like this interesting, I don't know, triangulation between those three characters about the way they orient themselves towards, this kind of American dream narrative that Kino is creating for himself.
Although, yeah, it's interesting to me. It feels like the emphasis of the story or the parable is just definitely more on like just the kind of abstract nature of the pearl. Like I hear what you're saying with the American dream and just being kind of sold a false bill of goods, but even the American dream was concocted, I feel like, very much earlier than this. Like by the mid 20th century, or approaching the mid 20th century. I mean, I guess you're right. There, you can sort of evoke it by saying, of course, what Kino's experiencing could only happen in a firmly established kind of like stacked, like very like firmly established society that's there to kind of strip you of all your valuables.
Yeah, it's rigged.
Right. You can only rig something in advance. So like Kino is enmeshed in a thing already. Yeah, I just feel like the emphasis is on maybe even more, but I guess it still works with the American dream, which is itself an abstraction. But it's also the only book that he wrote that doesn't take place in America, and I'm just curious about that. But like maybe trying to draw a parallel and being like, we all suffer. That's the point of a parable. Is like
I think some of his war books take place in Europe, but
okay. But just the abstract valuation of something, also, like natural resources. as a sort of proto ecologist himself, I guess, and working with all of these like day laborers and stuff in California. I don't know, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like one of the things that I was thinking when the whole sort of American Dream thing is like, surely he would have seen among those people that he was familiar with and working with something that is still true today, right? We can talk about immigration, and we can talk about the fact that there are still day laborers in California working fruit fields and all that sort of stuff that come with a sort of related ideology, right? Like I can come to America and I can find my my pearl, right? And make it for my family and so on and so forth. And so I feel like certainly that sort of thing was happening in Steinbeck's time, and I see Kino as kind of participating in those sorts of narratives.
But where the thread sort of gets lost for me a bit is the story in its entirety. Like, is the pearl actually innately evil, or is the context in which the pearl is found so predatory and horrific already? Like, is the pearl is everyone's reaction to it natural, or a kind of aspect of human nature, or like is it just the fact that, like, this is the tension I'm talking about in the abstract nature of the pearl? Like, the only reason people's greed and all of their worst aspects are like brought out of them, and they just try and beat up Kino and fucking steal it and fleece him and scam him, is because there's a value to the thing. And I don't have a very coherent point to put on it, but because the American Dream to me was always like hustle and grind, and I don't know.
I mean, I think that it definitely relates to the American Dream, and you can equate it to the American Dream, like the gold rush type shit and all that.
True.
But I think that like how it relates, like it fits as a parable to me because it does seem to like it would work as a story across time. Like I feel like this story could work in like the year 1200 even. It's very parabolic, like we shouldn't say.
So there is some human truth to it still, right?
There is human
I
truth.
agree,
Like
but
I don't think it. I don't think it
I'm
because
not
it's
saying there's not,
like,
for the record.
No, I
but
know.
it is
At this point, I'm
interesting
not even
to-
arguing with your point.
I think it's interesting to think of it as like a study of human nature and not just from a capitalist point of view, because like, where do you draw that line? Like, where exactly does that where does greed initially come from in our history? I was thinking a little bit about that. Like, is that just a human trait at this point because it's been a part of our civilizations and our hut civilizations for so long? Is it human nature solely, or is it just like a part of a history of societies that don't necessarily work because there is this evil that can be inserted into it by something like a pearl or gold or
Yeah, I mean, like I was thinking of There Will Be Blood or whatever.
Yeah.
These are all
Yeah.
prior to capitalism with a capital C, kind of being like the de facto ascendant system of the economy and its organization. Capitalism is actually, like, as it exists now, like, right, a pretty recent thing. It's not a recent or new idea, but it's like its current instantiation, right? Gabe, would you say is fair, is kind of relatively in human history, like,
Yeah, like neoliberal
young
global
idea.
capitalism. Yeah, I mean, sure.
I don't know. I'm over my head already if we're talking about economics. A little bit.
No, no. I mean, we're not really. I mean, I think again, right? Like, it's not even. The point I was trying to make earlier wasn't even so much about capitalism per se, so much as it was about this fiction of the American dream, which has been around and like crafted through art and story since fucking the founding of the country, and certainly since something like Manifest Destiny and Westward Expansion and all that sort of stuff. And I think, so yeah, the point was less about capitalism per se than it was about the concept of the American dream.
Okay, so what I was thinking in that regard then was like, and capitalism and the American dream both sharing, at least early on, the idea of individualistic competition, represented in capitalism as like the free market, but otherwise in like sort of the frontier, rugged individualist America as like scrappiness and ingenuity or whatever. Like, I think them being kind of them having a bridge between them in terms of the concept of your worth, like a meritocracy and just things emerging kind of naturally, and that being a lie also.
Yeah.
Like pretty quickly. Maybe true for like a brief period when things were really
Like-
not I don't know, formalized.
I mean, I think that like I was thinking a lot about Gatsby, reading this book, and I mean, to me, Gatsby is just way better because it has like that. It has the theme of someone actually going through and like getting the wealth, but even after they have the wealth, they are succumbed to the inevitable like demise of themselves because of like richer people or whatever.
Yeah.
And
it's like
you
the
know,
next phase.
like Kino, he has the pearl, but he kind of he never receives the wealth. He never ends up selling it. He just always just has the thing. So
You know
I don't
what
know.
Kino- I
Go
was
ahead.
just gonna say, Kino. I feel like what Kino does is just. I mean, yeah, there are differences that are important, obviously, but right, you said Gatsby gets he makes his riches. He has ill-gotten riches. He has it, and it's not satisfying. And by the end of that book, you see the superficial nature of his relationships to people and how everyone was also just kind of, again, a stereotype almost, like just all your friends and come out of the woodwork when you win the lottery kind of thing. Like, they're not real. They're fair weather friends, as they say. And
No
Kino
new friends, dude. Kino should have listened to Drake.
should have listened to Drake.
Yeah.
But Kino, like, I mean, his whole experience is very, very harsh. But eventually, he's just like more horrified by that reality of others around him, more so than himself, even, or it's a horror at his situation and all the people that he thought he knew very well. I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, I if anything, I feel like that was an aspect of the book that I feel like Steinbeck could have explored more, because
Yeah.
Obviously there's like Kino has failings, right? And I think the book is, I don't mean to come off as saying like the book is an entirely sort of like political commentary or anything like that. I think it's very human, and I think it's about this one individual dude's failings in a lot of ways, and it's about the ways that we sort of can imbue objects with false meaning and like attach, like a lot of our self-worth. And like at one point in the novel or in the novella,
Come on, now, pamphlet.
Kino in the pamphlet, Kino kind of cops and is like, at this point, like the pearl literally is my soul, he says, or something like that, right? So it takes on this aspect of his identity because he has invested so much, like, of his own future and his family's future in it, to the point that it becomes part of him, right? And it's like that. It's like if someone has like a fucking baseball card that they think is worth a shit ton of money, you know what I mean, or something, and then they go to fucking on Pawn Stars and they're like, oh yeah, this is actually the one that's actually worth money is the one with the quarter-inch misprint on the right corner, and yours is just normal and it's worth nothing. And the person can't accept it. They can't wrap their mind around it because that thing is so much part of their identity. And
it's so much a part of them. They're like, I am Randy Johnson.
Yeah, exactly, dude. I am.
I actually am him.
Not only do I have, but I am the big unit.
Yeah. Oh. Shout outs to the big unit.
Shout outs to the big unit, Randy Johnson. Come on the show, dude. But I think that it really does make me think about Pawn Stars a little bit, because there's in all of those people, right, who have imbued so much meaning in some of these objects. There's a real sense in which I think they kind of want to hear that the Pawn Stars guy doesn't want to buy it, because they don't actually want to be rid of it, right? They want, because that is their identity. They want to keep the thing because having the thing is part of who they are. And I think that Kino kind of goes down that road in the book.
Yeah, actually, that's funny. I just I love Antiques Roadshow a lot, and I read this New Yorker article. I think it was New Yorker, about the success of that show and how it's like one of the most low budget shows ever, and it's on fucking PBS, but it's like, the top PBS show, and it has been for like 30 years or something, and it's just like, oh, wild money making success. And they talked about like how fucking wholesome it is, but at the core of it, it's like these people's desire to be potentially rich from their property, which but also there's a lot of rich, like I love that show, so I love like psychoanalyzing the people that are being appraised. And you can tell when someone like has an amazing painting by like Klimt or something, and they're like, oh, this is worth $25,000, and you can tell by their reaction they're like, oh yes, yeah, that's great. You can see that they're maybe a wealthy person, and they're just like kind of going on the show to be kind of gratified, and their status to be like elevated or whatever. Confirmed.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's not even so much about the money or getting wealthy from it, or maybe it starts out that way, but ultimately it becomes part of your identity, right? Like it's not, yeah, okay, maybe originally it's like I can sell this and make a bunch of money, but over time, and especially with something that's imbued with like, historical meaning or family meaning or whatever, which is not the case in this book, but in those some of those stories, it becomes like it's not that this thing is going to make me rich, it's that part of who I am is I'm the person who has the Hank Aaron baseball, or I'm the person who has the John Hancock letter or whatever. And that's part of me. That's part of my identity.
Yeah, and like in some ways it can come across to me as like wholesome. Like if someone's just like a baseball card collector and they're like, I have some sweet cards. Like there's like a line drawn somewhere that I'm not totally sure where. Maybe it's just like it's like when it becomes elevated and you're like an aristocrat or something, and you have not baseball cards, but you have like Monet paintings or something, and then it becomes like a sick fascination because it's too much money. I don't know. There's some line drawn for me.
You're talking about just like art dealers,
yeah,
like art collectors.
Well, no, I mean I'm just thinking about Antiques Roadshow.
I feel like the people that are most likely to go down this sort of Kino path are the people who have like one thing. They have like the one thing that they think is valuable and that they've attached a lot of meaning to, and that's Kino.
Well, I think that's where, Paul, you were kind of going, right? You were describing like the people who kind of know they're just rich and they want it confirmed and they just want it publicly confirmed. And then there's like the people that are not rich, but they have some sort of heirloom or some shit, and they're like, that's all they have, and they're pretty sure it's worth a lot, and it's like a doll or just some piece of furniture or like a fucking
Well,
pot
those are
or
my
something.
my two favorite moments that I wait for on
And they're
Antiques
nervous.
Roadshow. my two favorite moments are when it's a rich person and I can tell they're rich and they have like something that they already know is worth a lot of money, but they're going to like just to see how much it is on the show, so they like have some level of fame for their weird inner
Right.
circle. And my favorite moment is when it's appraised like slightly less. Like it's still like $40,000, but I love when I can tell they're like, "Oh, I thought it was worth 100,000," and you can see it on their fucking face. I love that, and I also love when someone does have that one thing that they think is worth something, and that they're like, "Oh, my family passed it down from like the 1700s. It's a plate from Louisiana,
yeah.
and it's amazing china, and it's beautiful." And they think it's worth like $1,000,000, and then they're like, "Yeah, this is a knockoff from like 1830. I know you thought it was from 1650. Yeah, it's worth $100." And I fucking love those moments because they're so sad. I mean, it is sad, and it's a little bit of me being a fucking horrible person. But I also kind of love the slap in the face they get from like putting so much value, and I'm sure they talk to their inner circles about how, you know, special they are because they have this one object that was passed down in their family, and then they lose their part of their identity, and it's like, I love it.
Well, what you're describing is no shade to you, Paul, but probably a bit of the evil that this book is exploring, right? It's just
Yeah.
Schadenfreude a little bit. It's like you're describing the pleasurable experience of watching people get shot down when they're so sure that they're gonna get some fucking golden ticket out of their existence, which is what Kino is doing, and what a lot of I think the townspeople in the fishing village are like. They're like feeling. They're like, fuck this guy. Oh,
Yeah.
this guy's so sure he's gonna like buy a rifle and his son's gonna go to school. Fuck
Yeah.
him. And so like they're going there. They're doing the same thing as Antiques Roadshow. They're going to the appraisal market, and they're hoping to see the dude get exactly what he got, which is like a bunch of people saying that it's actually kind of like more of a curio and a rare an obscurity, and it's not worth selling, and it's actually way less. The key point though being that they're all lying in this case,
Yeah,
right.
and that it actually is probably worth more than Kino thinks it's worth. But Gabe, I also to your point about like the identity thing, there is also that vein of like. There's a little bit again. I know I've been reading it all so much, but like
Someone's got to do it.
like Kino's nervous by he states what he wants to do with the pearl and the riches he's going to get from the pearl, and he's not entirely comfortable with doing it. Like he's super anxious about the fact that he's like he makes it seem he's like sweating, and he has a pearl. He's like and there shall be a great marriage between me and Juana. And he's like, and I'll have a rifle, and everyone's gasping in the crowd, and he's just like, he's getting kind of like carried away, but he's super nervous, and it just goes, but now, by saying what his future was going to be like, he had created it. A plan is a real thing, and things projected are experienced. A plan once made and visualized becomes a reality along with other realities, never to be destroyed, but easily to be attacked. So I kind of like that. I really like that little chunk there. Like, as soon as you've concretized something and have a plan of action, that is such a human and common experience, I think, even divorced from, like, finding a pearl or whatever. It's just like, okay, I've actually formalized a plan, and I want to, like, act on it, and here's how I'm going to do it. And that's the moment when everyone's on your ass. And everyone's like, that's stupid. You've made a blunder here. You've made a misstep. Like, I actually think you shouldn't do this, blah, blah, blah. Like,
Well, and that's also the moment where you concretely, like you sort of said, like you concretely establish conditions for failure, right?
Yeah,
like
right.
As soon as you say, this is what I'm going to do,
in other words, yeah.
then you have now introduced the possibility of failure, i.e. if you don't do the thing that you say you're planning to do, then you failed at it. Whereas if you just kind of say, vaguely, oh yeah, maybe one day, or da 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 da, that is not as concrete a possibility. But as soon as you start taking steps down that road, it inevitably becomes a live option.
And that's where the abstraction of like an object or a curio or an antique or whatever, as it sort of like welds itself to your identity, makes more sense to me as an evil and a good in equal turn. You know, it's kind of a, you know, connotationless thing in and of itself, right? Is like you can attach all these abstract futures to it, or like what you're gonna do or what it means. But as soon as you make that an action, or try and like put that to some sort of practice or derive value from the thing, and then try and, you know, yeah, it's a whole other thing. It's a different game. Fuck, I had something better to say about that.
Well, if it comes back to you, say it, because I had a point that I wanted to make that was apropos of nothing, but just totally in a different direction. But just because you guys were talking about the villagers and stuff, I kind of like loved the way he used the other villagers in the novel, sort of like gathering around when the doctor comes, and following them up when they go to the doctors, and following them up again when they go to the pearl buyers. And it almost felt like I was reading like it felt like they were sort of like a classic, like a Greek chorus, almost like in like Euripides or like Aeschylus or something, where in the sort of ancient Greek plays, where there's this group of people that are sort of there kind of reinforcing the story or adding some things to the story. And it kind of just felt like, you know, the way that the townspeople were operating in the story. I don't know. That was just something that sort of jumped out to me as kind of interesting. Again, apropos of nothing else to say about it personally, but
Yeah, they're speaking what's supposed to be a kind of symbolic
yes,
gamut of
exactly
of expressions. But what I guess not fully to the attaching to what I was trying to say before, but just that the that abstracted quality of something, and then actually being like, I'm actually going to do this. This is what I actually want for myself. I'm going to do this, and everybody being like, shut up. All the people trying to steal it from them have basically their own incredibly subjective but emotionally basically what they feel to be objective better uses for the wealth of or you know, good fortune of somebody else who they might deem as like unworthy, and like that being the big engine that like moves everyone's self-centeredness and greed. I guess it's just like subjective emphasis.
I read that actually. I read the townspeople's chatter as more as of like the inner monologue that Steinbeck expected of his reader or something. I thought it was like a weird choice. It was like this is what you could be thinking about what's going on in this book. So I didn't actually. I thought it was more. It was heavy-handed to me. It was a little bit too like on the nose. Yeah, I didn't like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely get that, but I also think that that's sort of also to get back to my point, like the function of the Greek chorus was to be sort of like, quote unquote, like the ideal spectator, right? Like sort of narrating and kind of like here's you know, filling in some gaps here and there, sure, narratively, but in general they were kind of supposed to be the bridge between the audience and the action of the play, right? Or the action of the drama. And I think that to your point, Paul, Steinbeck does use them in some ways in that function in this story. So
Yeah,
it may whether whether it clicked for you or not, I think it may have been intentional.
Yeah. I think I don't know. I think my biggest issue is that I wanted more layers to this. I think that of his time there were writers writing things with more layers in a smarter way. And I would almost like the townspeople to be saying one thing, but maybe Steinbeck trying to say something else in in the writing of the novel or something. Just like I don't know. I wanted like a few extra layers. I think of some other theme that wasn't so apparent.
Well, what like if we're talking about this as a parable, which I think is appropriate, maybe a padded out one. Like, what value do you think it has as something to introduce to people in 8th grade? Right? Like, yes, we are beyond this, supposedly. And I do actually like revisiting kind of stuff like this. It's interesting. But, like, I think it is, even with the Gatsby and whatever, it's like, we can recognize great writing and whatnot, but, like, ultimately, I think we're all sort of describing a bit of just a sort of over-familiarity with the subject matter and the themes and, like, the kind of moral lesson of the book. But if you were however old, well, how old is an 8th grader?
I have no fucking clue.
13?
13? No, that seems young.
15?
14?
Wait. Like,
Split the difference. You know, what are some other things you remember reading in middle school? I'm actually just kind of curious about this as like an educational.
8th grade is like 13 to
that,
14. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think 9th grade was like a separate piece, and Catcher in the Rye for me.
I think that was high school, yeah, 9th grade or so,
Yeah.
10th grade, 9th grade.
So and those books both feel like a big step up from this. So this is like a 1-year difference.
I'm tempted to, I don't know. I kind of want to defend this book a little bit, but just to answer Matt's question, other stuff. I definitely remember reading a bunch of short stories in middle school. Like I remember reading the what's the one about the kid who gets locked in the closet during like a nuclear attack or something? Do you guys remember this?
It's a sci-fi book about when there's the sun rises for once every year on a different planet, and it's planet colonization. I don't remember what it's called. No.
But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the kids bully him and shove him in a closet, and he misses the one sunrise
that he's ever going to see in his lifetime or something, right?
Yeah, something like that.
I read that in middle school for sure.
Me too.
I think I read
The Hobbit in middle school.
Did you for a class?
Yeah, I read it in Mr. V's class. Mr. V. Do you guys know Mr. V?
I didn't. I had a different Mr. V.
Okay.
For music.
I was reading a lot of fantasy. So actually, these things were like impactful to me. Like, I did like The Pearl. I also remember when I first read it.
I think I read the Ursula Le Guin short story, the ones who walk away from Omelas, in middle school.
Did not read that.
Which is about it's basically about like a society that's like perfect and utopian and whatever, but it's based on like the enslavement of like one out of every 1,000 children or something. Yeah,
Fuck, I read this too.
Yeah. That was middle school.
I think I think that's worth thinking about when also, I don't know, revisiting, I guess, things like this.
Yeah.
It's like, what is this describing that could be sort of like genuinely unique and supposedly just like innate to human nature in some way that is worthwhile to extract, but is simplistic enough in its presentation to stick with middle schoolers.
Yeah. I think from this book, I would say it's, and I do think it's sort of, yeah. I mean, I think it's like something along the lines of, don't get too attached to material things at the expense of your friends and family or whatever. Would be the like middle school takeaway.
Right.
But also like maybe possibly introductory to like capitalism bad take in middle school too.
Rigged systems.
Yeah, maybe.
System.
Yeah, I do remember something like that being gestured at, not really engaged with, but because you're just trying to get the fucking kids to read at all. At that point, I think.
Which I did
mean,
not do in middle school. I was jerking off.
Dude? Are you not now?
No, I mean you see.
I was
my, you
I
see
was
where
just
my hand is.
reading. I was just reading and jerking off.
I was jerking off reading The Hobbit for sure.
Paul just wants to get dommed by the Balrog.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I want Smaug to blow smoke in his face.
Paul.
Paul's got a smouging fetish.
Smoke.
Yeah, but I definitely thought, like, you know, the fact of, like, the pearl collector, which stuck with me now, like the fact that the pearl collectors are all the face of one single guy, basically, who's giving them orders. That was something that in the current reading kind of jumped out at me almost in relation to the other stuff in the book in a way. And I'm like, okay, I'm definitely primed at this age, at this time, to now value this little bit of the story.
Jeff Bezos. He was the one.
Yes, dude, it literally is Jeff Bezos.
Yeah. So, you know, that's kind of an interesting little, like, just phenomenological thing. Like,
Jeff Bezos is going to take your pearl to space.
do you think he'll be on the moon when we're old?
No.
I don't know. I don't care. I want to kill him.
Someone will, but I don't
Paul?
think it won't be him. I don't think we can say that on the podcast. That's a threat of violence.
I got to
That's
reel
fine.
in my homicidal tendencies for the podcast.
No, it's fine. I'm gonna put both my one hand around Jeff Bezos' throat while he's asleep, and his eyes are gonna open in panic, and he's gonna feel the cold steel of my Glock on his forehead.
That's okay. That's too specific.
I'm gonna pull the trigger. Until I'm out of bullets.
Thank you
Everything,
for doing that.
everything we say on this podcast is a joke. For the record,
The satirical.
Yeah.
It's for
Yeah.
satirical purposes that I said that. But yeah, I don't know. Like,
well, what do you guys think? What do you guys think is the middle school takeaway? Like you said, Matt or Paul. What do you think? Like Matt, you said the capitalist thing.
No,
I
I
don't think
said
that's the
that.
middle school
That's
take.
mine. I think that is like
Well, you
the
both
middle.
kind of said.
I mean,
yeah, true.
I think that would be the main takeaway for me. I didn't read it, but I think I would probably like latch on to the like humanistic, like people are bad. Don't trust them. Don't trust like the
I don't know
higher
if
ups
that's
in your.
humanist.
Yeah, that doesn't. I don't think that's
my
humanistic.
own. That's my
People
own
are
personal
bad.
humanistic take.
That's called misanthropy.
Yeah.
But I think that would be my take if I read that in middle school. Though it would be like be a little bit untrusting of the civilization that surrounds you, possibly.
One
Or
thing.
at least,
Yeah, go
That's-
ahead.
yeah,
Paul.
for sure.
no, that's it.
Well, one thing that I was curious about, I actually feel I know we've gone about as long as we thought we were going to go with this book, but I feel like there's a lot of things that I still want to talk about. One, speaking to Paul's point, like I feel like one of the things that jumped out to me, and we haven't even really talked about the climax where they're in the cave, and he's
Yeah.
being hunted, and the actual thing happens where his kid dies.
The top of Coyotito's head
Rough.
gets blowed off.
Yeah, F in the can we
by
get
a
a can we get a
bullet.
big F in the chat for Coyotito?
Yeah, when I read that, I was like, "Oh shit, blasted baby!"
But like none of the villains in the book are identifiable, which I thought was so weird. Like every time, you know, because Kino starts to descend in this sort of paranoia and he can't sleep and he's like always listening for sounds outside of his hut and stuff. And
Right, justifiably.
justifiably, right. And of course he sometimes jumps out and gets into some scraps and fights a couple times. And then ultimately when they flee, and their boat gets sabotaged and there's all of this shit fucking arrayed against them that justifies his sort of paranoia. None of the villains are ever like identifiable. Like every time he gets into a fight or sees someone do something wrong, or even Juana a couple times. It's like, who did this? And they're like, I don't know, I couldn't fucking see it. That felt meaningful to me, right? That like it's always this like faceless shadow form that's doing these things that is unidentifiable, which felt
The
weird.
Nazgul.
The Nazgul, which felt weird to me, precisely because of what you said earlier, Paul, which is that it's such a small community where people should be like pretty readily identifiable, even in the dark. And I guess I just wondered like what you thought Steinbeck was trying to do with that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm with you. Like when I first read it, the first attack, I was like, what the hell was that? It kind of came and went really quickly, and I was like, was that a fucking animal? Like what? It seemed like he was fighting a beast of some kind. But then it happens a few more times, and yeah, it's obviously just like somebody or some different people from the village. You have to assume.
Maybe
but
like
yeah,
hired by the doctor or the pearl buyers.
Yeah.
That was my
And
assumption.
Like mercenaries, especially like the three dudes at the end, just some sort of mercenary type dudes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what to make of them being like kind of anonymous.
Well, speaking of sci-fi elements, I do want to shout out Steinbeck's description of the hunt at the end of the book, because that felt like fucking something out of like a Stephen King novel or something, where it's this like huge like dark hooded rider with a rifle on a horse following these like guys that I pictured on like all fours, like skittering around on the fucking ground, like sniffing and looking at broken branches and like trackers. And I think they are described as like running around on all fours.
And kind of like howling and like
and they make these
yipping
weird
when they
animal noises and shit, but they're people. Like that was eerie and like weird and almost a departure in tone from the rest of the novel for me, but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, again, yeah, Steinbeck really knocked it out of the park. Like, I think with this, I really like this. I was thinking of also like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, like the end when they're just being again just tracked, and the trackers are like really fucking good. And they're always just sort of observing, and they have to stay on watch. But yeah, I mean, that's all precipitated by Juana trying to throw the pearl in the ocean, that leading to Kino chasing after her and getting her, and sort of luckily that saving them from the fact that their house was being burned down.
And of course, Kino kills a guy in the process.
Yes, most importantly,
Yes.
and the reason for the trackers by the end is that Kino kills somebody else who was there to rob him.
And they have to flee the town.
And they have to flee the town, and they see that their house is on fire, and they are going to attempt to take a boat out, but then, his ancestral heirloom hand-me-down boat has been defiled, and the hole's been kicked in it, which is a huge, significant faux pas culturally.
It's like he
describes it as like worse than someone dying, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's worse than him killing the other guy.
So that
Which is wrong.
Which is an
eventually-
interesting connection to put imbuing value in a material object over human life, right?
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
The boat is a pearl in itself.
It has value for sure, like significant value. Yeah. So all that leads him to like laying low at Juan Tomas's for a day, I think, and then they try and flee to the big city, and then they get tracked. And while they're getting tracked, that's where you sort of also see Kino and Juana like be described as kind of a singular entity almost, too.
Or
like
like two sides of the same coin, like a duality.
Yeah, there is this sort of mythical almost gender dynamic going on with them, where they sort of represent like, a being in its wholeness through their union, basically.
It's almost like Jungian, right? Where he's like, they're trying to find the And at the beginning of the book, at the very, very beginning, there's a line where he talks about like him and his wife and their son and the family and all that stuff as like, it's just described as like the whole, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously that has a hole punctured in it, just like the boat.
Just like the boat.
When their baby's heads gets blown off.
And their
by a
baby's
gun.
heads.
Did you guys
And
think
that's
of the
obviously
baby
bad.
dying and them like walking back to the town triumphantly as sort of like a metaphor for not having kids?
I don't think they came back triumphantly.
Well, at first when they were coming back, they were like, yeah, they're walking in like side by side for the first time and not like
Yeah, because
single
they had the
file.
pearl and they thought they were rich, right?
No. After the kid
No.
dies.
Oh, really? They're like,
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I,
after the
that's.
kid
I think
died.
that's actually an interesting point, Paul. Which is that like once Coyotito dies and they come back to the town, having been defeated, basically, that's the first time, and that description is really important. That normally Kino, as the sort of male leader or whatever, is walking ahead and Juana's behind him. But when they come back after Coyotito dies, that's the first time they're ever walking side by side, and it's like notable enough that the townspeople notice it. And I
Yeah.
wonder if that isn't a comment on like some perverse way that they have found a sort of wholeness. Maybe it's in despair and in hideous like loss, but maybe that is the kind of like, and we haven't really talked about the music stuff a ton. I mean, maybe we can, but it's almost like a resolution in a musical sense where they're it's a sad one, but they have reached that sort of unity, that wholeness, through this hideous experience.
I think in the world of the book, they've matured. It's at a terrible cost, but they are like, they both now have brought back to the village, the wisdom, right, of like what was typically reserved for literally triumphant, like mythical figures in like other myths. But in this case, it's
Who leave and come back after a vision quest or whatever.
right, and they've conquered something or whatever. But in this case, it's perverse. It's like a sad and perverse kind of realization of a kind of truth. But it's also in the face of, in this case, the society as is constructed that they've existed in, and where they go from there is also a question mark that's left unanswered. They've just
So, yeah.
kind of been tragically influenced by it.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. I mean, not weird. This is a really stupid take that I'm just trying to be funny, so bear with me. But when they came back,
Go off.
like after killing the trackers and their baby's dead, but they still have the pearl, I was like, just keep going to the fucking city and sell it and then buy a new baby.
I am kind of surprised they turned back instead of continuing on.
Yeah.
But I guess that's sort of the thing that it took to break Kino's attachment to the object. Okay, here's a spicy take. Like we've already said this episode, this podcast motto is every book is a sequel to the last book, but in this book, in the climax, essentially what happens when Kino goes down to kill the trackers, to try to free them and give them passage to the city, he essentially, in an Edward Jessup way, returns to monk and gets
Oh my God!
no, listen. He gets
feel you.
he gets totally naked because he doesn't want them to see his white shirt in the darkness. And Steinbeck's description of him climbing down the rocks is very animalistic. He's scoping out every potential loose foothold and anything that might fall and alert them to his presence. And he's kind of
Well,
creeping.
he calls him a lizard. He's
Yeah,
like
he's like a lizard. Lizard brain. And he's like creeping along down these rocks naked, and then ultimately has this like outbreak of violence and kills these guys, and it's crazy. But then ultimately the kid is shot in the violence by this random shot fired off by the tracker, and him and Juana are kind of united, and they finally, the same way Edward Jessup finally gives up his quest to find the truth of science or whatever, Kino gives up his quest to sell the pearl and do the thing. It's the same fucking shit.
You're right. You know what? Fuck. You're 100% right. That's a great linking up, dude.
Yes,
I love
let's
that.
go.
He does. Eventually, he just devolves. I mean, those trackers, not the one on the horseback, but the other two, like you just said prior to this, were like weird, almost pseudo beast-like men who were like sniffing the ground and yipping when they could smell the trail. And Kino had to get on their level. He had to shed the final like vestiges of his humanity.
Yes.
To do these acts of violence to just purely survive. And he had to reconstitute as some sort of human being by the time he got back to the village with his wife.
And he obviously loses more in the process than Jessup does.
Right.
Because his child actually dies. But it's the similar sort of process, it seems to me.
Well, you have the same object of fixation that's going to be some sort of salvational, I don't know, source for you.
Yup.
Damn.
What if he came back to the town with his, and he was like throwing the pearl up in his hand and catching it, and then he just started like throwing it at people's heads like Bullseye from the Daredevil comics. He was like, "I'm Bullseye now," and this is
It's actually an origin story.
It's Bullseye's
for Colin
great-grandfather.
Bullseye.
Or this is the Joker's origin story, and he just becomes Joker-fied.
Yeah, and he wears a pearl necklace.
He wears a pearl necklace and then kills all the pearl buyers.
And he eats the pearls like a candy necklace because he's the Joker and breaks his teeth.
Wow, that's really good.
Oh god, that would be sick.
And he poops them out, and he gets it out of his poopy.
Yeah,
He makes a necklace again.
yes, out of the broken pieces.
Jesus.
Yeah. Yes, I don't know. Do you feel like we've?
Okay, last serious question that I have, and
Yes.
just because you mentioned earlier, Matt, that it was one of your favorite parts of the book. Talk a little bit about the music stuff and all the songs.
Oh, it was just my favorite in terms of like as a device. I wish I had marked all the different names of the songs because that would have helped. But I think there are 3, potentially 4 major songs. But I know, like we just said, there's the Pearl has its own song, the Song of the Family, and the Song of the Enemy. I also think there's some sort of like Song of Evil, just more abstractly.
Yeah, there is. There's a Song of Evil. I'm just doing a quick Control F through the text. There's the Song of the Family, the Song of the Pearl, the Song of Evil, the Song of Danger.
Okay.
Maybe there is no Song of the Enemy. Maybe I made that up. Oh no, there is a Song of the Enemy.
Yeah. So I just liked that as like a
And then there is a Song of the Pearl, and there's something called the Song of the Undersea that's mentioned once or twice.
Oh, sometimes when he's diving.
Yeah.
And I just like that as a way to describe vibes. Basically, that's all I meant by that. I was just like I liked that as a way to say that the Kino's intuiting something or subjectively kind of like picking up on something. It was just fun. It was good. It was effective in the form of a parable, and there was even this kind of like Inside Out quality where like the Song of Evil or the Enemy like mixed with the Song of the Pearl by the end, and there was a new flavor of song that was created from that. And
The remix.
Yeah, there was literally a remix. Whereas, like, I'm starting to sense sort of notes of the Enemy within the nice Song of the Pearl from before. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, it's a 90-page novella, folk tale. It's just the emphasis is on economy and like the crystallization of like the found phrase or like the turn of phrase or a method of encapsulating things that could be way more wordy. And in that sense, I just like, I read East of Eden and Of Mice and Men. Yeah, I was actually like kind of impressed. Like, I still had a good time reading this and found it to be worthwhile and meaningful. And, in my 30s. And the last time I read this, I was, 13 years old.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think that's a vote in this book's favor, honestly.
Yeah. Paul, what did you think about the music stuff before we go to the final?
I honestly like blew right over it.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about it. I think in my head I was like, this seems kind of dumb. I'm just gonna keep reading. So,
Yeah.
So I literally didn't even like think about it twice.
Fair enough.
But when Gabe and you said in the beginning that it was kind of like written cinematically, I mean, in retrospect, I kind of think maybe that was part of it too. Is like insert soundtrack, good song here.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't necessarily like that take. I don't maybe think that Steinbeck was going for that, but maybe that was part of it.
Yeah, I'm sure it probably wasn't that reductive because it obviously works, like Matt was explaining, kind of literarily on its own merit. Yeah. But I do suspect that was potentially somewhere operating in his mind.
It doesn't read like Altered States where
no, definitely not.
Once you have that idea, you're like, okay, I can see where this was a script that had connective tissue like added onto it.
Yeah,
descriptively afterwards.
Definitely
this feels like it was written to be what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And like
Yes.
the Philip K. Dick book we read too, that was kind of written in a cinematic way too, I think. Or at least we kind of presumed that he was writing it in that way. And that came across even before I knew that. But yeah, this one stands alone more as like simply a parable, which I think probably takes some skill to be like, this could be something cinematic, and I'm writing it in that way. But in the back of my mind, I am thinking about it as potentially a movie.
Right.
But I'm not gonna like focus on that.
Who writes parables anymore? I was also thinking about.
That's a good question.
At Night All Blood is Black. Like,
yeah, me too. Yeah, I was a lot because I was too.
What made you think of it, Paul?
I was thinking that because it integrated a parable. It kind of tacked it on in a really interesting and like consequential way. I mean, he also had like 70 years or 60 years to kind of feed off of other writers. So but yeah, I like the way he expounded.
Expanded. Both.
On the idea of a parable and like kind of twisted it and flipped it on its head a little bit and like wrote a story within the context of a parable.
Yeah. There's a folktale within it.
Yeah. And this was
sizable.
just purely a folktale.
And that book is similarly short. That's like, it's got like 30 pages on this one maybe? That book's like 120 pages or something, 130?
Yeah.
They both kind of had that spoken word feel to them.
Mm-hmm.
And actually I listened to both of these books partially on audiobook. So maybe that adds to my opinion that they were spoken word.
Well, there is something.
Stupid
There's
shit.
Well, no, I think there's actually is something to be said for like when you discuss the folktale or the myth or the parable. Maybe not necessarily, but like historically, it has been of the oral tradition and lends itself to the oral tradition. Like the idea of being able to recount this verbally to like young people or like whoever, and have those repeatable, dramatic turns of phrase, and like to have these moments that are kind of you're able to make essentialize them and like say them simply and plainly, but in a sort of poetic language. Like all of that is what happens in this book and in At Night All Blood is Black.
Yeah, I think the difference
Yeah.
for me between At Night All Blood is Black and this is that like that book seemed to be written in a way that someone actually was speaking it to you, and I think parables tend to be like written as more of like a concise story, possibly that like can be reiterated in spoken word form in your own way or something. But At Night All Blood is Black seemed to be from like a very unique, direct perspective, which was Alpha,
Yeah.
which was also kind of a
Yeah.
unique take.
Yeah, parables don't tend to be first person, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess you're right. That's more of a folk tale or a myth.
Yeah.
Definitely, because also like parables again don't often have weird metaphorical, magical, or surreal qualities as much. I
Yes.
guess.
They're more direct, like here's the moral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But it is interesting, like that this book is framed from the beginning as basically a parable, as a folktale, and that book is like another narrative that kind of like envelops a parable or envelops a fairy, not a fairy tale, but
It divulges its like origins.
yes,
Yeah.
So
You're a wizard, Harry.
you all know what time it is.
you just did. We are.
Blunder.
I'm gonna be honest, guys.
Flumble.
I've had a significant amount of wine.
Yeah,
Oh,
buddy, that's
sick.
what we like to hear.
We just
Dude,
did
did
read
not
another
book.
Paul, I said it completely.
He was fine, Paul. He was fine.
Okay. I enunciated. I was fine.
This is the fan favorite segment of the show. We literally just read another book where
So-
we get to talk about Harry Potter, and you can't say shit about it because
You can't
we
be
already read a fancy book, and now we get to talk about Harry Potter.
Yeah, that's right. We took our vegetables down, and now we're able to actually have, Boston cream donut, whatever we're doing.
So this is where we take all the characters or all of the important characters from the book we just read and put them into their respective Harry Potter houses. Debate ensues, drama ensues,
most heated part of
friendships
the
are
show.
made and broken.
Yep.
Let's get
Here we
to it.
Who first?
Let's do. I mean, okay. Should we do? I mean, I don't think Apollonia qualifies. We don't have enough on her really for a house, or maybe we do. Juan Thomas's wife.
Yeah.
Nah. Let's just do
okay, I
Juan
don't have.
Thomas.
Okay, Juan Thomas is.
I'm gonna say Gryffindor.
Ooh.
You guys don't think so?
I think Juan Thomas is Hufflepuff. I think he is a good Hufflepuff, but I think he's a sort of noble advocate of like whatever the village's prior rules are.
Yeah, my first instinct was Hufflepuff for similar reasons, but I'm open to an argument for Gryffindor.
I don't really have one. That was my initial inkling. I just thought that I don't know. He just seemed like a strong, level-headed individual. I just didn't get Hufflepuff vibes. I don't know. I got more Gryffindor vibes from him.
He's only willing to go so far for his brother on the basis of norms.
On tradition and loyalty.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, he's Hufflepuff.
All right, bet.
Got ya? Nice.
All right.
Whoa, shit, dude. Fucking the tummy and burping sounds have been so good this whole
For me?
whole time. You and Gabe.
I burped a few times, I think. Okay, Koyotito doesn't have a house.
He's a baby.
He's
he
a
doesn't have
baby.
a soul.
The Sorting Hat would have nothing to say. So it's
That's why him getting killed doesn't matter that much.
So I guess it's just Juana and Kino.
They're both Gryffindor.
Whoa.
100%.
That's a take, dude. Paul, you're nodding. You agree?
They're both very, very brave. Like especially towards at the end, they show a lot of brave characteristics. Like Juana has the chance to like go off with the baby, which I thought was the smart move, but she's like, no, I'm gonna stay.
Is that Hufflepuff though? Is that loyalty?
No, I mean, I thought it was more I thought it was more of just being brave, because like if you're loyal to the family, that would have been the smarter choice to been like, yeah, you fucking lead them away, and we'll try to escape and like, sell the pearl ourselves and survive. But she was like, no, I'm gonna face the enemy. I thought it was brave.
Yeah, okay, I get that. But I don't know.
And they're one thing. I think conceiving of Juana and Kino as one being, working in tandem, but ultimately singular.
So you think they have to be in the same house?
Yes, I do actually, and facing that danger that is essentially flying in the face of all the norms that Juan Thomas is so ultimately beholden to and loyal to, makes them the opposite, and I would say therefore Gryffindor.
Ugh. I hear
and
that.
they come back to the town as well, which is another brave gesture. They come back in the face of this horrific tragedy.
The snake nest.
The snake nest, the serpent's nest.
Yeah.
I guess okay. Here's like a hot take maybe. I know Kino loves his family and he does a lot of brave things, but he is also like literally hypnotized like by a Horcrux. And, and so like I wonder if he's not like a Slytherin. Like he wants the power and the wealth and the sort of benefit of this beautiful fucking Horcrux object.
Nah.
That he imbues so much of himself into, the same way that Voldemort put all of the aspects of himself in the various Horcruxes.
Especially now if you think Juana is his other half.
I think the Horcrux analogy doesn't work as well as the One Ring analogy, but it's less of there's more Lord of the Rings qualities in this novella pamphlet than Harry Potter one. It's like an object that anyone across all classes would be fascinated with.
Okay.
You're right. It does work way better. Anyone could benefit from having this thing, like the ring.
Yeah.
Okay.
Except Tom Bombadil, who doesn't turn because he's fear of height.
Yeah.
And
he's the best.
And no one can be Tom Bombadil.
No.
Okay. Okay. You know what? Yeah, I'm sold. I was a little all in on the Horcrux analogy, but you broke that for me.
Yeah.
You got to read another book. It's called Lord
College
of the Rings.
Professor demolished by facts and logic. Yeah.
All right. Gryffindor all around.
Cool.
All right, score time. Oh no!
Not first.
Wait! Scrabble word time.
Oh shit.
Oh yeah, I did not pick one.
I did pick one. Okay, my Scrabble word. This is Paul's new segment, so it's hilarious that he didn't pick a word for it.
Yeah, fuck.
So this is our new segment, our fan's second favorite segment, where we pick a word from the book, and there's like
typing,
I know, I'm sorry. I was just making sure I got the definition of my word correct. Where we pick a word from the novel that we just read, either that we didn't know or that would work well for Scrabble from a strict kind of points perspective. And so it's a little open. There's a lot of options, a lot of directions to go. This one was a little tough because Steinbeck generally is writing pretty kind of concise, clear prose in this novel. But I did find one, and the one that I found is, and I don't even really know how to pronounce it, Legerdemain. 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 And this word comes when Kino is going to sell the pearl, and he's talking about the Steinbeck is describing one of the pearl buyers rolling a coin in his hand beneath the table. And he
it's like a little trick of the hand.
Exactly. And so legerdemain means skillful use of one hands when performing conjuring tricks. And a new word for me, unlikely to ever be able to use in Scrabble, because it's really long. But so I went more with the I didn't really know this word criterion for this.
It's also a good way of going down this segment direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you have one?
Do you, Paul?
I do not, but I'll pick one right now.
Yeah,
my
one
word
right now.
My word is pearl. It's a hard, lustrous, spherical mass, typically white or bluish gray, formed within the shell of a pearl oyster or other bivalve mollusk.
Bivalve, yeah.
And highly praised gem. So that's my word.
It's not a terrible Scrabble word. I mean, I believe E, A, R, and L are all 1 point, but P is 3. And there's a lot of ways you could fuck with it. Like if someone has like ear down, you could drop that P and L, or RL, P and L at the end, at the beginning.
Yeah, or if someone has P and you can just get that
RL. Yeah. No, that's actually, that might be a good Scrabble word depending on the situation.
I'll go hard next book and pick a really good one. I picked that one last minute.
Yeah.
Shit, dude.
Matt's stuck, dude. Matt's floundering.
How much could you get from just like pesos?
Pesos,
I'm doing money again, like Don DeLillo.
Matt's frantically Googling what's the best word in the Pearl novel.
In the book that I'm reading.
All of those letters are 1 point except for P, but that's true of Pearl also. So
what about ammonia?
That would be a lot of points. So the M's
okay.
Well, not a lot necessarily, but the M's are both 3.
Oh, I just found another good one. How about jackrabbit? It's all one word. If someone has rabbit down or jack, you can't have jack.
Yeah, jack I think is a Scrabble word. Like you can jack up a car.
Oh yeah, true. So yeah, that's a pretty good one.
Okay, I'm going ammonia. I know it's a little bit. You don't want to go for in Scrabble, right? Like typically, you don't want to go for the long word. It's just a sort of like stunting word. You're not actually
unless you're using all of your letters and you get 50 bonus points.
Yeah, if you get a nice triple score. Yeah. Triple letter score.
Okay, well I'm gonna stick with ammonia. I think as far as just like pointage, it's the best I can do right now.
I'm with it.
Nice, that's my favorite gas.
That's awesome, man.
All right, score time.
Dibs not.
All right, fine. I'll go first. I was on the fence with this one, reading it. Basically, I was trying to figure out if it was going to be above or below a 3.5, and then go from there. And I think talking about it a little bit tonight and reading about it. So I get full disclosure. I gave it a 3 on Goodreads, which to me is below 3.5. Like I round. I doing a little bit more reading. Like I think one of the interesting things we didn't really talk about where this falls in like Steinbeck's own life and his corpus. He was coming off the success of The Grapes of Wrath, which was like 8 years before this, and he was really trying to sort of reckon with commercial success and money and all of that. And I think that kind of plays into his writing of this as well, and all of the other stuff that we've talked about.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot here.
Steinbeck's just got a cool biography.
Yeah, he really does. And reading this book really makes me want to read more Steinbeck. Like I want to read Grapes of Wrath now. and I want to read some of his other stuff. I've never read East of Eden, Matt, like you, so I want to read that.
Very religious.
Yeah. You don't say. Eden? What? So I'm gonna bump it a little from my Goodreads score, which was below a 3.5, and I'm gonna bump it up after tonight's discussion, and I'm gonna give it a 3.62.
Holy moly! All right. I was basically gonna give it a 3 solid. I was thinking 2.8, but talking about it, yeah. Once again, it always tends to be a positive experience to talk about it. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a 3 even.
I was right around a 3 as well, but I think I'm gonna give it like a 2.4.
That's a big difference.
That's a big dip.
Yeah, I 2.5 is average, and I just didn't have a good time reading this overall. I mean, it's not a bad book. I would say it's like an average good time read, but I don't know.
Baby's head gets blown off.
Yeah, which was nice. It should have been maybe 2.6.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm just going to stick with 2.4.
You think this book was only 0.4 better? Oh no, you gave Altered States like a 0. Matt gave it a 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gave Altered States like a 0.5.
Okay, still though, Matt, you think this is only 1 point better than Altered States?
I gave it a 3.
You gave Altered States a 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
That means a lot more than I feel like you're even suggesting, though. 2 is like bad but fun. 2.5 is like
Average.
an average. 3 is I'm having a good time. Don't try and characterize my score as
I'm not. I'm just okay, here's a proposal for anyone who's listened to this far. I think for our 52nd episode, our year celebration episode, we should do a re-review of all our past scores. What do we think?
That sounds good.
that would be funny.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
definitely going to be inconsistencies, so that'll be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd
Alright.
be fun.
All right. That's my suggestion.
Love it. Love it, and we'll do it.
All right. All right. Well, that's that. That's that thing.
That's been another one of these.
Delivered straight to your fucking ears
Yeah.
by the Spine Crackers
Guys.
podcast hosts.
Thank you to John Steinbeck.
Oh my god. How did we not make that joke earlier?
Thanks for saving that till the end. That
Yeah.
was very good.
Yeah. Anyone who listens to the end of this episode is going to get some nugs.
Some jewels, almost like pearl-like jewels.
Because we need time
Speaking of jewels,
to be irritated by each
Yeah.
other's presence and ideas in order to develop a beautiful sort of, final take.
Yeah, final orb.
I hate you both so much that, when you talk about the book, I get irritated, and then I start to sort of create a calcium deposit around my irritation, and it creates this beautiful sphere that's worth a
Then
lot.
you poop
On
it
the,
out of your butthole.
I poop it out of my butthole, and then I present it, and on the content market, it's worth quite a bit of money.
I'm preemptively changing my score. It's a 3.42, not a 3.6.
Were you intimidated by our lower scores? And you
I
were
mean,
like, oh my God.
whatever. Yeah, a little bit. Maybe it's psychological, but
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
it's
You
not
got mogged by us.
It's not over 3.5. That's probably
Mogged.
not true. I was caught up. I was caught up in the discussion.
It's not nothing though, man.
No.
That is what this podcast I think is probably majority chunk here to demonstrate, right?
Yeah.
I'm changing mine to a 5. No, I'm going to change mine to a 2.5, actually. 2.4.
2.50.
Directly right in the middle, smack dab
Yeah, there you go.
in the
Nice.
middle of the pearl.
that.
With
Price
a
is
fucking,
Right equivocator.
We
Yeah.
figured it
Yes. Yeah.
out. All right, everyone. Thanks
Good
for
night and good luck.
listening. Good night and good luck. We love you.
That's that.